Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with today's guest, but first we want to give a shout out to our two podcast partners, We Coach and the Global Community of Women in High School Sports. These are two great organizations that you really should be a part of. That's the Global Community of Women in High School Sports and We Coach. And now let's hear a quick word from our podcast sponsors. We want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for their support of the podcast and sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve every aspect of your athletic department. At my schools, we use surveys for just about everything, for teachers, for coaches, for kids, and for parents. And the information that would come back was almost always positive, and it'll be the same for you. But surveys also allow that squeaky wheel parent to vent a little. And sometimes they'll share a small issue that you can address and keep it from turning into a big issue because you didn't know about it because you hadn't done a survey. Go to athleticsurveys.com or email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to find out more. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Go to athleticsurveys.com and let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. We also want to say thanks to Final Forms, the industry leader in forms and registration. But Final Forms is so much more than that. Final Forms can help your community with things like mobile accessibility. They've got reminders for parents about policies, about physicals, and all the forms that come when you have an athlete in the house. Final Forms can also help your coaches with things like attendance and communication. And for athletic directors, Final Forms can help you with eligibility, with rosters, and all the reports that come across your desk. You know, it's time that you talk to a team that's walked in your shoes. To take the next steps, go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake to get started with Final Forms. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. Go to huddle.com. Huddle is how the world sees sports. Join the 200,000 teams that use Huddle to help their athletes play better. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure our school was a Huddle school. And if you go to huddle.com, you're going to find tools that are going to help every team, every coach, every athlete in your program improve. Huddle is going to provide a complete professional grade solution to the challenges you and your coaches face. At huddle.com, we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. Join the 6 million users and turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to Gipper.com and see how athletic directors are creating world-class marketing content for their school's social media channels. You can do it in seconds on any device, and you don't need any design experience. Go to Gipper.com and tell them you heard about it on the podcast and use our podcast code ADPOD10 and get 10% off. That's Gipper.com. Start creating custom branded content for your school's social media channel. We also want to say thanks to Snap Mobile. Go to onsnap.com. That's onsnap.com and check out their entire suite of platforms designed to help you as an athletic director do your job better. There's so many platforms on the OnSnap website. Snap Raise is their fundraising platform, and our coaches use Snap Raise for years with tremendous results. They even have a program where you can get your funding before you actually start your fundraiser. Snap Spend is their money management platform. Snap Store allows you to order custom spirit gear. Snap Connect is their multilingual family engagement platform. And Snap Manage will help you design an entire website for your school's athletic department. You can find it all at onsnap.com. That's onsnap.com. We also want to thank Hometown Ticketing for their support. Hometown Ticketing is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com. They're going to show you how to set up and sell your tickets online. They'll show you how to scan the attendees that come to your games and collect your revenue. And every step of the way, you'll have a dedicated client success manager that's providing hands-on support. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com. They'll also show you how to sell tickets for things like school dances, your school plays and concerts, even graduation. You can find it all at hometownticketing.com. Simple and easy online ticketing. We also want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive indoor scoring tables and video boards. Their products not only raise money for your department, they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and check out what their fantastic products can do for you. You can also schedule a live web demo and see their products in action. That's sidelineinteractive.com or email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com. Do it today. You won't be disappointed. We also want to say thanks to Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school's record boards or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com and check out their touchscreen interactive video boards and their library of templates. They're on a mission to help bring your school's legacy to life. And they're going to help you recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com or email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com to get started. Their products are outstanding and their customer service is tremendous. That's vitalsignswalloffame.com. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We're going all the way up to Minnesota today, and we're going to visit with Brad O'Donnell. A lot of you, our listeners, will recognize that name, very active at the state and the national level. Brad's a certified master athletic administrator, and he is the activities administrator, also involved with community ed, for the St. Clair Public School System, and that's in St. Clair, Minnesota. Brad O'Donnell, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jake. It's been great to have an opportunity to be on the podcast and be able to watch a lot of your podcasts and get a lot of great ideas from different people.
Oh, I appreciate that, and we're excited to hear from you. So let's go and jump right in. We always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that Brad O'Donnell origin story, where you grew up, where you went to school, maybe take us up through the high school and college years, and then we'll take a quick break and hear more about your career path. But what's the Brad O'Donnell story?
Sounds good, Jake. I grew up in Glencoe, Minnesota, just about an hour away from where I am now. In the younger years, we just played unorganized, non-organized activities, loved every sport. It's just the way it was. My older brothers, I was the youngest. So, I always played against all the older kids and really had a great time. We made up our own rules. We did those things. Went into high school. I played baseball, football, basketball, and baseball pretty much up until about through 9th grade. And then unfortunately, I had knee surgeries for 3 straight years, unfortunately. So I went from surgery to rehab to basketball. I had to pick a sport. Baseball wasn't very good as a catcher. That does not go well with your knee issues. So, but in general terms, basketball became the focal point then. And not being able to do other sports, I got involved in the choir, the drama programs, and some of those things too. That ultimately was, gave me a better round ideas of what we see here in our profession now, is that we oversee all those activities, at least up here in Minnesota. So that's kind of high school basketball. Had a lot of success. I remember we had I was a third in the history of the school that they moved up a sophomore. That just didn't happen down there during those eras. And I still remember the first game, we were playing the number 1 ranked team in the state. We were going to undefeated. They were undefeated. Things were going well. They ended up putting me in with about 12 seconds left because the point guard fouled out. I'm thinking, great. I'm standing out of bounds. I'm supposed to pass this ball, and we're ahead. So we ultimately could win this game. and upset them. Sure as heck, my oldest sister, was a cheerleader at that time. She's standing close to me, and she said, "You better not screw this up now." And I'm thinking, "Oh, great." But ultimately, you know what? You pass the ball in. They gave it back to the sophomore. I'm not really sure why that was the case. Had to make 2 free throws to ice the game, and we went home. And it was interesting because we had a snowstorm going on out there, so the team couldn't get back to their home. So all the families brought in some of the kids. So it was a little bit easier to have them in our homes after we won. But it was a great experience that way. But that's one memorable thing that we always will remember. So went to college, got my physical education, adaptive PE, coaching minors, you know, and then got into my master's was through Indiana University with sports management. And I did an emphasis on dealing with challenging personalities, which is something that we deal with probably every day, unfortunately, in this job. And I was able to go through my CAA and my CMAA, which was a great opportunity through the NIAAA.
Well, again, our regular listeners hear me say this all the time, but I just love hearing the stories and the journeys and the pathway. You and I are of a similar age, and you know, you mentioned you in college, you know, you got your undergraduate degree in physical education, adaptive PE, and then coaching. You know, back in my day, you know, I was a PE major like you, which I don't even think PE majors exist anymore. But I also got that health endorsement. Our advisor said, if you can teach health, it's going to help you get hired. Talk about that experience for you, that undergraduate years of, you know, taking the different aspects, you know, all under that physical education umbrella, but maybe talk about the adaptive. What are some experiences during those courses that, you know, are still with you today?
I think, you know, at that time in our era up here, the adaptive was the big thing going on, and they needed adaptive PE teachers. And so by taking those classes, you start to realize that even kids with challenging physical abilities can do a lot of successful things. And you can realize, you see the growth in those kids probably tenfold quicker over a period of time. And, you know, and I did that for my first couple of years before I got into administration. But interestingly, over COVID, I had to go back into the classroom for a couple, and adaptive PE was one of them, just to help them out because they needed more bodies. And it was great for that year. It's a lot of work. It's a lot, you know, taken away from your other jobs, but to see the smiles on those kids and be able to do that. But, you know, I think the coursework really helped me as just an educator as a whole, to realize that everybody learns differently, but everybody can be successful over a period of time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, great rewarding experiences. You know, I did a little bit of work over the years with Special Olympics, but again, those are great experiences. Thanks for sharing that. For our listeners, our guest today is Brad O'Donnell. He's a certified master athletic administrator, and he's the activities administrator for the St. Clair Public School System in St. Clair, Minnesota. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back with some more, so please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank Gipper for their support of the podcast. Go to Gipper.com and see how athletic directors are creating world-class marketing content for their school's social media channels. You can do it in seconds on any device, and you don't need any design experience. Go to Gipper.com and tell them you heard about it on the podcast. Use our podcast code ADPOD10 and get 10% off. That's Gipper.com. Create custom branded content for your school's social media channel. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. Go to Huddle.com. Huddle is how the world sees sports. Over 200,000 teams use Huddle to help their athletes perform better. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure our school was a Huddle school. And our coaches just loved the smart cameras, the mobile apps. Of course, they love the analytics, but there's so much more. Go to Huddle.com and you're going to find tools to help your teams, your coaches, and your athletes play at the highest level. Huddle is going to provide a complete professional grade solution to the challenges that you and your staff face every day. At Huddle, we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. Go to huddle.com and join the 6 million users and find out how to turn your school into a huddle school. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest is Brad O'Donnell, Certified Master Athletic Administrator from St. Clair, Minnesota. Brad, we always like to let our guests give a shout out to some of the mentors that they've had over their career. None of us get to where we're at on our own. So who are some of the folks you'd like to acknowledge?
Well, I first have to say my parents. They're the ones that gave us the groundwork. Understanding hard work is what you need to do. Work ethic, finish the job. Those are the things that are successful, that made me successful over the years. So I think, my mom and dad definitely have been a huge part of my life. And then, when you talk about colleagues, I remember starting this out 32 years ago, and Ed Rundell was one of them, and Sharon Early from Mankato West was another, and they were just around the area. They always told you, they'd help you out. Sometimes we don't even have original thought. We just steal everything from everybody, and then we just kind of repurpose it. But they were just great mentors. And the biggest issue that they always talked about is get involved. Try to get involved. That's how you're going to find new people, new ideas. Just get involved at the section level, at the state level, at the national level, whatever you can do. So, that was, those people really helped me get the groundwork going as an AD. And I always thought, I didn't know if I really wanted to be one, but I remember our high school AD was Jerry Stiles. He was a great guy. Sometimes I didn't like all the things that he made us do or couldn't do, but he was a great gentleman that did this professional wonders in the state of Minnesota. And so I said, yeah, someday maybe, if I get out of education, then maybe I can do that. And so when I had an opportunity early in my career, I thought, yeah, we'll take that. I have some experience from him just by watching. My boys basketball coach, Don Tangen, is probably by far a mentor. He took me underneath the wings as a young athlete. He believed family was important and trying to pull things together. And, just interesting. He was, I see him maybe once a year, maybe every other year, depending. He's not living in Glencoe any longer, but we talked, and I go back to in 2010, he was one of the first people that called me when my oldest daughter passed away from illness. And I haven't talked to him for about a year, and he's one of the first ones that, just want to talk to you how we're doing and stuff. And, those are the type of coaches that, do the X's and O's, but they're more concerned about you as a person and developing their relationships long term. And so for him, by far, is somebody that I will always respect and look up to. And then probably the most important person, probably the best friend, my wife, Jennifer, high school sweethearts. But the reality ends up being that person kind of keeps you grounded, kind of helps you, remind you that even though this job may be seen very large and task orientated, the managerial part, sometimes you just have to go back and say, what's most important? Family, faith, those things are really the people that kind of keep you grounded in your profession. And sometimes when you're in bad days, you go back and look at those mentors and those people and say, yep, tomorrow's another day. Tomorrow will be a better day. We'll go back at it again. And so, I think those are the mentors. There's a lot of them that are out there. And I got involved with NIAAA a lot because of Dan Johnson from Hopkins and Jamie Sherwood from Wayzata. They're big schools. I'm a small school. They got me into the LTC stuff, and then kind of just went on from there. So those are probably the key ones that I would say right off the top of my bat.
Well, we're going to talk about your state association and NIAAA in just a second, but I want to touch on two things that you mentioned. And again, great sharing. Thanks so much for doing that. First, you gave a shout out to your own high school AD and coaches. And I know a lot of us, love those days and love those people, but I don't think we acknowledge them enough. I remember, our high school AD, and almost like a godlike figure, but just never even aspired, never even thought of myself becoming an AD. And it wasn't anything that he did. He did his job great, and he was a great guy. But my coaches, for whatever reason, maybe it's just that personal connection you have with your coaches. I knew I always wanted to be a coach. I wanted to be like them. But as you become an AD, you find yourself doing and saying things maybe that your own high school AD did. The other thing I want to touch on is your wife, high school sweetheart. Where was she during that big game when your sister was dogging you on the sideline?
Well, at that time we weren't dating yet, so
okay.
But to be honest, here's how the scenario went. I was asked by the drama choir director to be part of the West Side Story drama play, fall musical, and so we're probably a couple of weeks before rehearsal, and I said, well, yeah, I'll do it and stuff. And my best friend and I and her best friend and her was running around the corner, and I knocked her over. I picked her up, apologized more or less, and so we walk into the theater, and I'm saying, I wonder who that girl is. Well, she was the lead in West Side Story. I guess I wasn't paying attention very much at that time, but that's how we started our relationship, and ultimately 32 years of marriage. It's been fantastic with 4 girls, and things have gone fantastic for all of us at this time.
All right, great story. Okay, what was your role in West Side Story? What part?
I was a jet.
You were okay. You were part of the gang.
I was part of the gang. So,
all right.
But
yeah, a very, very, very long time ago, I was in a production of West Side Story. I was Officer Krupke. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, you talked about some of your mentors helping you get involved at the state and local level. So talk about that journey. We have a lot of younger ADs that listen, and I think it's important for them to hear the path that people like you and I take, that CMAA, that doesn't happen by accident. So talk about your journey with your state association and the NIAAA.
Well, I think from the NIAAA, our state association, I started to get involved at the conference level first, and then we went to getting more involved in our section, which is made up of about 40, 50 schools, and so you got involved in some of those things, and then people just asked. They wanted us to be involved. They wanted some younger perspectives. They also wanted some people from smaller schools. It's a big difference between, when I meet with Dan Johnson and Jamie Sherwood, which are the 2 biggest schools in the state compared to mine, it's a whole different world. They don't understand ours, and we probably don't understand theirs sometimes. I mean, but the reality ends up being, so that's how I got involved with the NIAAA. I was on some, even if you go on like a state awards committee or, get involved in some format. I've been a mentor, I've been a vocation. I mean, I've done lectures and stuff at all of our state conferences for a number of years. And, I'm an LTI coordinator for the state of Minnesota. And, that's how I kind of got involved in the NIAAA through that process first. And, then I was able to be a vice chair for 714 with his dealing with difficult, challenging personalities. And I have some great guys that I work with. And so when you get into all those programs, and then, I don't know, one of the conferences, I decided, I'll put my name in for a committee. Didn't really know, I just picked some. I didn't really know much about them. And I was fortunate to be on a committee with you in the certification area, and they do a fantastic job. It was a great committee for 4 years, a lot of work, but those things were really helpful. And then, that's kind of how you got going. You did your CAA, I thought that was fine. And then in 2000, and so it took me probably 4 or 5 years before I even did my CMAA. And, and that project just kind of, it was great because you looked at your own program and what do you need to do. And again, everybody has something that they're initiating at their school, whatever. You don't have to recreate the wheel. You can just work on something that's going to benefit you and your school. And at that time, we really needed to do some mentoring and stuff. And so a lot of the mentoring stuff that I put together was involved in our CMA project. And, it worked out well. And from there, I ultimately then went to get my master's in sports management, and but the NIAAA and the MNIAAA and the Minnesota State High School, all those organizations that I've been involved in, a number of committees, it's just been an opportunity to meet a lot of great people, and a lot of great people have a lot of knowledge. And if you can take one nugget from every one of those groups, you're going to make yourself that much better, and you have a bigger toolbox that's full of ideas.
Okay. Again, the theme that I kept hearing again and again back when you were talking about your mentors, encouraging you to, and then also when you were sharing, get involved. Okay. You know, for listeners, you need to take that step. You need to go to the conference. You need to attend the sessions, introduce yourself to other ADs. You know, like Brad mentioned, I did the same thing. I filled out that form to be on a committee, and we both ended up on certification, and I love my time on certification with you and with all the others. So again, get involved. Brad, we'll do this again at the end of the podcast, but if one of our listeners wants to reach out, pick your brain a little bit about maybe your CMAA project or something else, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
Well, best way is probably email. That's B O'Donnell, ODONNELL at Saint St. Clair, CLAIR, Cyclones, CYCLONES.org. It's a long one. Otherwise, you can call my cell phone. That's probably maybe the easiest, 507-327-2791.
Okay. And we'll give out that information again, but I'm going to guess it's also on the NIAAA portal. So again, our guest is Brad O'Donnell. We're going to take another quick break, but please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. If you go to hometownticketing.com, they're going to show you how to set up and sell your tickets online. They'll show you how to scan the attendees that come to your games and collect your revenue. And every step of the way, you're going to have a dedicated client success manager that's providing hands-on support. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com. They'll also show you how to sell your tickets for things like school dances, school plays and concerts, even graduation. You can find it all at hometownticketing.com. Simple and easy online ticketing. We also want to thank the good folks at Snap Mobile. Go to onsnap.com. That's onsnap.com and check out their entire suite of platforms designed to help athletic directors do their job better. Snap Raise is their fundraising platform. Our coaches use Snap Raise, and it was just tremendous. They raised thousands and thousands of dollars, and they even have a program where you can get your funding before you actually start your fundraiser. Snap Spend is their secure money management platform. Snap Store allows you to order custom spirit gear for your program. Snap Connect is a really cool feature that is their multilingual family engagement platform. And Snap Manage will help you design an entire website for your athletic department. You can find it all at onsnap.com. That's onsnap.com. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Brad, one of the things we try to do with the podcast is this idea of sharing best practices. So I'm going to put you on the spot. What are some things that you do with your programs at St. Clair, or maybe you've seen them other places and you're looking to steal them? But what are some best practices you can share with our listeners?
Well, Jake, I think when I left, I was in a private school for 18 years, and then I went over 7 miles away, more or less, to St. Clair in the public school setting. And one of the things I noticed that culture is everything, and you have to build culture. And, you love to believe that you can do that overnight, or you can do it in a year, and it doesn't really happen. But, when we got here, the culture was not what I would expect to, like you want a winning program or you want to be successful. It was kind of like, well, we're just St. Clair. And so working with administration, which was fairly new also, we kind of developed this concept of what is the pathway that we can create a culture of success. And really the key word that we use here a lot is family. We're all family. Doesn't matter if you're a player, non-player, student, fan, community members, whatever the case would be. But, when you go through that creative, that cultural concept, you really have to be able to understand yourself first. And that's, what's the job description of what you're supposed to do? That doesn't matter if you're a player, coach, AD, whatever the case would be. And so how do you go about doing that? And then come with a lot of the common language. And that was probably the hardest thing, because every coach and every director all have their own thoughts and directions. And how do you bring them all together? And so that took a few years to be able to work with them on a regular basis, individually or small groups, and just kind of be at their practices so I could see what their culture was like, and how we become using the same common language across the board. So when we talk about those things, that's important. And then we worked on trying to make a purpose statement. And I think the purpose and the goal is different. Some people say it's the same. I think it's different. A goal has an end. Purpose doesn't. Purpose is what we're trying to accomplish. Why we do it. So every coach and everybody in the school, more or less, I haven't worked on the athletes yet. That's my next project. But the coaches, they have a purpose statement. They tell you why they coach. And it's interesting when you read some of them and do some of them, they don't talk about winning. It's always about all the other factors that they talk about. Now, don't get me wrong, they're all competitors. And so it's interesting enough. I always tell them, give me a couple key words inside that purpose statement. And so I've had to even pull one of their words, and I just tell them, I said, if I see you, or if I'm walking past during a game indirectly and I say a word, one of your words, that probably means that you lost sight of what your purpose was and got too involved in the game. So, it doesn't happen too often, but there's always a few. Every coach is different. Or I'll talk afterwards and just kind of mention that the purpose, reevaluate that at the end of the night as you review your games and some of that stuff. So, and then we made a collective purpose statement for our school that tied into our mission statement. And then, at this stage, now we're a decade plus into it, defining success is still the biggest challenge. How do you define success? It's not about winning, losing. I tell them, I say, I don't evaluate you on winning and losing, because you don't have a chance to recruit kids. I mean, you get what you get, and you use the most of it. So what are the things that we're going to look at so we can define success in our programs? And I think that part of it, we came up with performance characters, that we like, characteristics that we like, and moral characteristics. And, and it was great to get the whole group together and try to build something that was a different culture. And we definitely have done that. Our culture is completely different. And the kids buy into it. And those things are important. And so one of the things that our coaches have kind of done now is they might pick a word a week, a character, some kind of moral value or whatever the case would be. And that's the word of the week. And so they might talk to those kids after practice, in a huddle, take 3 minutes. That's what I told them. I said, just take 3 minutes. I'm not asking you to take an hour to work with all these kids. I said, take 3 minutes to figure out what the word is this week and what you're going to talk about. It might be how you handle and deal with female athletes, or it might be what family looks like, or whatever, from the family structure, and all those things. They just pick those things, and I think those things help kids understand more than just the game of whatever they're coaching.
Yeah, boy, well, that's a 5-minute masterclass on building culture. Great stuff. Two things really jumped out for me. I love what you talked about, where you take their mission statement and pull out a couple of words as reminders for them, or encouragers, as you're going through practice. I think it's very popular for people to talk about, what's my why, or what's your why? And that's important. But I want to see action. I want to see them putting that into use. Don't talk to me about it, show me. And that's a great way that you can help remind them and keep them on path. And then I also love what you talked about, defining success. We all want to win, And I think, you would probably agree with this. I think those teams that do win, it's simply a byproduct of them doing all the other right things. The winning kind of takes care of itself. Great stuff. Okay. Once again, for our listeners, our guest today is Brad O'Donnell. He's a certified master athletic administrator, and he's the activities administrator, also involved in community education for the St. Clair Public School System in St. Clair, Minnesota. We're going to take another break. I know that's shocking, but we'll be right back. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank Vital Signs for their support of the podcast. Vital Signs has a mission. They want to bring your school's legacy to life. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school's school record boards or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com and check out their interactive touchscreen consoles and their templates that'll help you recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. Let Vital Signs help you showcase your school's diverse history and your proudest moments. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com or email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com to get started. We also want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive indoor scoring tables and video boards. Their products not only generate income for your department, but they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo and see their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com to see exactly what their fantastic products can do for you. That's sidelineinteractive.com or email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com for more information. You won't be disappointed. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Brad, we've tweaked our questions for ADs over the 2.5 years that we've done this. And this next question I actually stole from Jen Brooks on her great webinar, The Global Community of Women in High School Sports. So here we go. You've been doing this for a long time, coaching, teaching, AD. What are some things that you have learned from your kids, your student athletes, during your 30+ career years in the business?
Well, I think from my athlete's point of view, listening, I think there's a big difference from hearing and listening. And I think as young ADs, you can't always, you need to take your time, step back, and truly listen to what they're saying. And I think when you do that, when you build that relationship with them, they'll be pretty honest. We'll do an exit review with our seniors more or less, because they've been involved in the program for the longest period of time, and they can tell us what the goods and bads are and stuff. But, I really truly believe listening is the biggest issue that we all struggle with at times, and sometimes no different than coaches. Coaches, I try to get as much information from them. We may not always agree, as we all know, and I have to make some tough decisions. But, more often than not, they're the ones that bring stuff to me. Here's an initiative. Do you want to try to be able to do this? A lot of times I'll say yes, especially if they're on board and they're willing to be side by side with me. If it's just me, it doesn't do any good for anybody. So, but I think, working with those kids, building some relationships, hate to say it. I find from old school, it used to be, I either call coach or Mr. Tangen. I've never called by his first name. In this day and age, either they can't pronounce the last name or they use the first name. And it bothered me for a while. And I thought, you know what? If they say my first name and they're saying hi, they want to talk to me. Hey, we must be doing something right, because at least we're building that relationship that's going to be successful, that will transform into their season, their program, their classwork, whatever the case would be.
No, again, great stuff. And your point about, calling, the coach by their first name, I never liked that. Even as a young coach, I enjoyed being called coach. And with my last name, you can imagine how it got mispronounced. So I was very comfortable with Coach Jake. And I'm still Coach Jake to people, years and years later. Very cool stuff. Can you think of an example or two over the years that at the time, maybe it didn't stick out, but in looking back, you can say, boy, that was a big moment. Anything come to mind on this particular topic?
Well, I think, one of the things that I always go back to, and I really truly believe that we need to ask kids how things have gone, what things are going well and stuff. So a lot of times after a game or the next morning, they're saying, how'd you guys do last night? Well, you know what their answer is 90% of the time? It's win or lose.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I always tell them, I said, I'm not looking for win and lose. How did you do? And one of the kids told me one day, I did really well. I warmed the bench all night. And I'm thinking to myself, now what comeback am I going to have on this scenario with him? But, I just talked to them about, hey, you helped out, you motivated the team, you were able to support them, you worked out in practices, those are the things that will benefit your team as a whole. And I think kids are starting to realize here that, we're not talking about winning and losing on those things. So, I think, some of those things, getting out, getting visible, getting out and talking to people, could be community members, getting your teachers on board. It's always one of the things that come to the events. You don't have to come the whole night. I mean, come to the C Squad game, walk through the building, see the kids all want to see you there, even though you don't think so. They recognize if you're there. And so those are things that I really try to really work with our athletes and our coaches and staff as a whole at the St. Clair Public School.
Yeah, I get great point there about encouraging teachers to come to the games, and you're absolutely right. The kids see it, and it builds bank with those kids when they see that teacher. Doesn't matter what the subject is at that game, and as you said, don't have to come for the whole game, but when they see him, that means a lot. Great advice. Once again, for our listeners, our guest today is Brad O'Donnell, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, and he's at St. Clair Public Schools up in Minnesota. We're going to take another break, but we'll be right back. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to Final Forms. Final Forms is the industry leader in forms and registration, but they are so much more than that. Final Forms can help your community with things like mobile apps. They have reminders for parents about policies, about physicals, and all the forms that come when you have an athlete in the house. Final Forms can help your coaches with things like communication and attendance. And for athletic directors, Final Forms can help you with eligibility, with rosters, and all the reports that come across your desk. It's time that you talk to a team that's walked in your shoes. To take the next steps, go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake and get started with Final Forms. Hey, welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Brad, you and I were talking during the break, and you mentioned a project that's very close to you. Can you go ahead and share that with our listeners?
Yeah, thanks, Jake. I've been a instructor, been on the education committee at the state level for a number of years, 15, 20 years, whatever it's been. And I truly believe educating coaches and stuff. So we've developed a certification to be a coach in the state of Minnesota. You have to be certified. Either that or you took a minor in college, which a lot of colleges don't even give minors any longer. So we've done that. We really worked hard on what do we need to do. And that's where kind of the purpose statement stuff came in. We talked about earlier, but yeah, I go back to coaches all the time. I said, you know what, you have to remember only 1%, and probably none here, will ever play at the professional level. 3% go on to play college. And so what do we do with the 97% that have a terminal experience? And I hope the terminal experience is their senior year when they walk out graduation day, not, they quit by the time they're, 8th grade or 9th grade or whatever the case would be. So, really education, trying to build that coach so they understand really what we're looking for. We've used the Joe Erdman book, and that, really ask 4 basic questions. And I think these questions, I use them for my interviews. I'm going to interview next week for head baseball. Those will be up there again. I use them for evaluation. Why you coach the way you do. How does it feel to be coached by you, and how you define success? And it's interesting sitting back and listening to them. I think the third question is the most important one. How does it feel to be coached by you? Because sometimes what they say and what I hear from student athletes don't always jive, and we get it. And you have to take a grain of salt, on both sides of it. But I do think those questions really help develop a coach. Really gets them to start thinking about why they are doing this. Because I'll guarantee you, Jake, you know what? We don't do it for the money. That's for sure. They do what they want to give back to the community and stuff. So we sit and we work with coaches all over the state of Minnesota, and we really deep dive into their moral and character values that they want are important to them. And so I go back and, like my purpose statement, I lead to inspire, motivate, and educate our St. Clair students to meaningful adults in a positive, competitive, and fun, structured involvement. So, I mean, those things, what are those things that we want to help coaches learn? Because, as you know, if you really love to coach, I always joke about this, but if you really love to coach, you should be assistant coach. Because as soon as you become a head coach, there's a lot more responsibility that I expect from you, and the state expects from you and stuff. But in general terms, how are you going to build that relationship with those kids? And, again, I go back to those coaches and I work with them on the idea very simple. If you don't know your purpose or your why, whatever you want to call it, then you'll fall back into your goal. And most time the goal is to win. And then it becomes winning at all costs. And then you forgot the idea of what is good for all these kids, because it's easy for the top 5, 6 kids that are going to start on your basketball team. What about number 15, 14, 15? Can they feel valued in your program? If they don't feel valued, then there's a huge disconnect. And I guarantee the teams that we've had success with, I look at football this year, we got beat in the championship game, but 11 and 1 is a great year. You're excited, but even the kids that don't play as much felt valued in that program. It was interesting to listen to the coaches at the end of the season in that huddle when they got beat. They didn't talk about the winning and losing. They only talked about what is important to them, which was really the student athletes and what they did. And it was amazing to watch the athletes come up to those coaches at the end of the season, give them a hug, talk to them, thank them. That's building that kind of positive ability for coaches to be able to do that. So we really go back, and I really deep dive into it. I always talk to and I've stole this from Top 20, but there's always going to be hits, and there's always and we always talk about, put a pause between the situation. So, for example, I tell the coaches, the bus doesn't show up on time. Well, it didn't show up last year on time, probably one of the times too, right? So why are you going off the deep end because the bus or the official makes a mistake? Well, you guys had 15 turnovers tonight. Did you give them 15 mistakes? So I always talk about putting a pause in there. The hit comes, take us 3 seconds to put a pause before you open up your mouth, because when you open up your mouth, not always good things happen. And so, go back and think about that as being really a tool that can help you. And then it goes back to really after you build that purpose with those coaches. And it's been great. They helped me just as much as I helped them. And I think it has definitely helped our culture statewide with the certifications that we've been able to put out there for these coaches. I think it has helped the sportsmanship. And as you know, the fans react to how you respond sometimes as a coach.
Absolutely.
So if you're out of control, the fans will be out of control. If you say, yep, I get it, and you have a relationship with the officials and stuff, you know what? The best thing is, hey, this is how I saw it. Well, this is how they saw it. And ultimately, they get to blow the whistle. So, and I think those are the things that if you are able to build that relationship with coaches, if their coach can understand that, they ultimately have to transfer that down into their younger levels. Because as we all know, our older levels have probably more training, more years of experience. What about that junior high, middle school age coach that, probably a college kid or somebody that, that haven't had many years of experience and stuff? And how do you get them ready to be able to deal with all the situations that might happen as a coach? So, I mean, that's coaching, and trying to build coaches and evaluate coaches and really try to teach them, here's the way to go. It's not perfect. None of us are perfect. We're going to fall off the deep end at times, but how do you get back on, and how do you address that issue after a negative thing happens?
Well, it's such a great topic. I enjoyed listening to you. You made me want to come and work for you as a coach. But we as ADs, we all schedule, we all do transportation, we all work with parents and all that. But the things that we love to do, I think, is we love to do coaches education. We love to sit down with our coaches and help them become better. That's where we get a real charge out of it. Great stuff. And again, you got me fired up. And your point about officiating, I've officiated for years, probably as an official, probably about 12, 13 years. But as a coach, I officiated every night from the sideline. So you can add another 20 years of that. But again, athletic directors that have a relationship with their head coaches. So when that bad call does happen, and that coach moves on, is coaching his team, not trying to referee the game, those are the coaches that the referees respect, and they're going to get calls. And that's not why you do it. You're going to get those calls later on because of the way you responded. Great stuff. Brad, this has been so cool, sitting down with you a little bit more, but we're not done yet. We always like to wrap up with the Athletic Director's Toolbox. We're going to take a quick break and hear from Athletic Surveys, who sponsor this. And then we're going to find out what Brad O'Donnell, a certified master athletic administrator, is going to put into his new AD toolbox. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. Before we go, we definitely want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment. Athletic surveys are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. At my schools, we use surveys for just about everything, for teachers, for coaches, for kids, and for parents. And the information that came back was usually over the top positive, and it'll be the same for you. But surveys also allow that squeaky wheel parent to vent a little bit. Sometimes they'll share a small issue that you can address and keep it from turning into a big issue because you didn't know about it because you hadn't done a survey. Go to athleticsurveys.com or email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Talk to the folks at Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. Well, it's that time of the podcast. We've been visiting with Brad O'Donnell, a certified master athletic administrator. But right now I'm going to challenge him to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job. But I'm only going to let him put 3 things in the toolbox. Brad, what 3 items are going to go into your new athletic director toolbox?
Well, I think for any new AD, I think the theory of fair, firm before the friendly is probably the best scenario. I tell it to our coaches too. Be consistent, fair, firm before the friendly, because if you put friendly in front of all those, normally problems happen. And so if you can keep your idea of building those relationships, but make sure you're fair and firm across the board, consistent as much as you can. Not everything's black and white. We get that. I think that will help dramatically for new ADs. One of my favorite books is from John Gordon, The Carpenter. Probably everybody's read it. If you haven't, please read it. It's a great way. But really, as an AD, you love, you serve, and you care about people. And if you don't do those things, you probably are not really going to be successful in this job. Because if you just allow the managerial part, that's the only thing you worry about, it will eat you alive, more or less. So, those are just kind of conceptual concepts that I think are important. I think another one would be visible, pay it forward. You can help out somebody. Just if you're in your first year, you can help somebody, and make them feel successful. So a couple of the tools or tactics that we've used, I stole from Top 20, 4 at the door concept, eye to eye, name to name, hand to hand, and heart to heart. So, you look in somebody in the eye. How many times do kids truly struggle to look somebody in the eye, or even some coaches, call them by their name. Sometimes, some kids never get called ever in a school day, in an 8-hour day. I mean, they may never get called on. Some of them don't want to either, but that's besides the point. But you can do these things right when you come into the gym, hand to hand, maybe it's a fist pump or whatever the case would be. And then when you get through those, you're going to start building the heart to heart. And so they're going to believe in you as a coach. You're going to be able to do those things. And I think 4 at the door is a good concept to remember. I think the other one that I've used even as an AD, but even across, is 2 by 10 is what I call it. 2 minutes a day, pick out 1 or 2 kids in the school. Because let's be honest, most of us, I don't even know half the kids. I'm in a small school. I can't imagine schools of your sizes that can do, who do you really know? But pick 2 kids out, 10 consecutive days, the same kid. Maybe spend a minute or 2 with them and just ask them some questions and get to know the kid. And that's how you start to build the relationship with people. I think with ADs, students start to talk, and students start to realize that, he's a human being. He wants to see us to be successful. It's not the guy that sits in the office and makes all the bad decisions that ultimately nobody likes. But I think those 2 things are really are big topics or tips that I would say that are really helpful to me as an AD. I know it's helpful to some of our coaches also. And then Dr. Sindra Kampoff is just up the road at the college. She's done a lot of studying as a sports psychologist, but she talks about the ants, the automatic negative thoughts that we all have. You have to really kind of stamp down those negative thoughts. They're always in the back of your mind. You don't let them in the forefront. So, and then I'll leave it with this, ADs, simply this, remember where you came from. Remember that family and faith, or whatever the case would be, should come before your job. Unfortunately, this job always takes over. It's not a 9-to-5 job or whatever the case would be. We know we're putting 12 hours a day in, 5-6 days a week. But remember your family, your kids, and all those things. Those are the most important people in your life, and they will be. When you leave your job, there will be a legacy there. What will your legacy say? You don't want your family to say, well, he was an AD and he was gone all the time. That really isn't the legacy you want. You want to have something else that you can draw upon. So, Jake, those are the things that I think could help an AD, a young AD, and I would be more than willing to give them advice, to give them stuff. If they need stuff, I definitely would help them out in any way possible.
Oh gosh, I loved every single one of them. You probably saw me scribbling those down. Great stuff. And your last one about the legacy, just this morning. And for our listeners, we're recording this on November 30th, so you're going to hear it in a very timely manner. Rich Barton just announced the release of his new book, Leadership with Legacy. So again, timely theme. Talking about helping other ADs, let's do that. If one of our listeners wants to reach out and pick your brain a little bit, find out how you do things at St. Clair and ADs, I think you've got a great resource here. What's the best way they can get a hold of you, Brad?
My email, bodonnell, ODONNELL, at St. Clair, CLAIR, Cyclones, CYCLONES.org. Or just call me, give me my cell phone, 507-327-2791. Call me. That's just how we do business. And I'd love to help out anybody that needs some help.
Okay. And I'm going to guess you're going to be in Nashville next week?
Looking forward to it. My wife and I are going. We're leaving here on Wednesday night, flying out Thursday morning. We're going to spend a couple of days before really the big part of the conference gets going, and I look forward to that experience. Look forward to seeing you again and a lot of our colleagues around the United States.
Oh, absolutely. So there you have it, folks. Brad O'Donnell, Certified Master Athletic Administrator. Brad, thanks again for being on the podcast. And like you, I'm looking forward to seeing you in Nashville next week.
Thanks, Jake.
For our listeners, remember the Zoom recordings of every interview get uploaded to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate you listening today. Come back just about every day for new content on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to check out our 2 podcast partners, the Global Community of Women in High School Sports and We Coach. Thanks for listening. Really mean that. Check out our sponsors and let me know. Shoot me an email if you'd like to be on the podcast or if you got suggestions on how we can do a better job. Okay. Everybody have a great week, and we'll see you next time.